Once upon a time, in a house where silence ruled like a king, a woman stood outside the back gate, thin arms hugging herself against the drizzle, her eyes fixed on the side door that never opened for people like her. The rain doesn't care who's rich or poor. It drips evenly on granite walls and frayed scarves alike. And today, it soaks Miriam's shoulders as she waits, unsure whether she's been forgotten or simply unseen. She doesn't knock again. Inside the estate, not far from where she stands shivering, the dining table stretches like a runway long enough to fit 12 guests, though only 3 ever sit. The children, pale and quiet, push cold food across their plates with silver utensils. They never speak. Their father eats alone at the head, eyes on his tablet, not his son's. He doesn't look up when the butler enters. "Sir," the butler says in a low voice, "there's a woman at the back door." "Which woman?" "The new one. The maid from the agency. The one who asked for the—" "I remember." His tone slices the room in half. He sets the tablet down but doesn't stand. "Send her away. She hasn't been fed." A pause. A long one. Then he says, "That's not my concern." The butler hesitates. His hands twitch at his sides, then he bows slightly and turns. Out by the door, Miriam still waiting, her clothes damp, her shoes too thin for the cold tiles they'll ask her to scrub. But when the butler steps out with an umbrella and a metal tray, she doesn't flinch. She already knows the answer. "There's food," he says softly, "but not a position. Not anymore." She nods. Quietly. Takes the tray with both hands, careful not to spill. It's warm under her fingers. She whispers, "Thank you," and starts to walk away. But something happens. A face appears at the window, small, pale, watching her. One of the twins, the boy. His breath fogs the glass. He doesn't wave. He doesn't blink. But his eyes follow her, the woman with no coat, no voice left to plead, but hands that cradle warmth like it's holy. Inside, the boy walks to the dining room and sits again, and for the first time in 3 days, he picks up his spoon. That night, the security camera footage is reviewed. The father, Mr. Harrow, stands in his home office, scrolling back through timestamps. He sees the moment. The woman at the door, the boy at the window, a gesture invisible to most. He presses pause, then rewind, then pause again. That night, he doesn't sleep, because the woman didn't ask for a job. She asked if there were leftovers. Not food, not salary, not a chance. Leftovers, and that word echoes through the hallways like a ghost. The next morning, Miriam returns, not by her own doing. A white car, modest but clean, pulls up in front of her apartment. The same butler steps out, more polite this time. He doesn't say much. "The master wishes to speak with you." She clutches the strap of her bag. "Why?" "I don't know," he replies honestly. But he saw something. Inside the estate, the air is warm but sterile. The windows are too clean. The light doesn't soften, it sharpens. The floors gleam like mirrors, and the silence is so thick it feels like an extra wall. She stands in the foyer, waiting. Mr. Harrow appears at the top of the stairs. "Why did you ask for leftovers?" he asks from above. His voice is cold, but curious. She doesn't look up. "My mother taught me," she says gently, "that what fills a belly doesn't always come fresh." He narrows his eyes. "I'm not hiring a poet." "I'm not one," she replies. He walks down slowly, each step deliberate. He's tall, sharp, clean-cut, but tired in a way that's not about sleep. The kind of tired that money can't fix, the kind that stains a man's bones. "Do you have experience?" "No." "Education?" "Primary school, then life." He studies her face, and for a moment, she sees something in his. Grief, but it flickers and vanishes, like a flame too afraid to stay lit. "You may clean," he says. "That is all. No talking to the children, no wandering." She nods. He turns to go. "And the leftovers?" she asks, softly. He stops. "Whatever you find at the end of the day," he says without turning, "you may take." That evening, she cleans the room where the late Mrs. Harrow used to read. There's a chair by the window, a soft one. A closed notebook lies under the cushion. She doesn't open it, but she holds it for a while, like something once loved. And then she sets it back down. In the hallway, she hears a sound. Small, rustling. She turns. A child is sitting at the top of the stairs, watching her. He doesn't speak. She doesn't approach. She just smiles. And in that pause, in that silence, something shifts. Not loud, not visible, but something in the air warms, like the house remembering a lullaby. That night, she eats quietly in the staff quarters. Rice, stew, leftovers. She doesn't complain, because to her, it tastes like beginning, and beginnings rarely come clean. They arrive messy, broken, quiet, just like her, just like the house. And somewhere upstairs, a child hums a tune he doesn't remember learning. The next morning, the rain has stopped, but the ground still remembers it. The air holds that quiet dampness that makes sound carry softer, as if the world is whispering instead of speaking. Miriam steps off the service bus just before sunrise. No one greets her at the gate. No one needs to. She knows her place now. The house is already awake in its own way, lights flickering on through motion sensors, a silent robot gliding across the polished floor, removing traces of dust before any human breath can stir it. But the soul of the house is still sleeping, or maybe just numb. In the laundry room, Miriam starts with her hands folding, pressing, sorting by touch, not thought. Her fingers are fast, gentle, sure. She doesn't speak, doesn't sing, but inside her chest, a memory hums. It's not a song, not exactly, just a sound she used to make when her little brother was afraid of thunder. A breath, then another. Rise, fall. And somehow, in the quiet, the fabric in her hands seems to soften under her care. The door creaks. She turns slowly, not startled. It's the other twin, the girl. She doesn't say a word, just stands barefoot near the doorframe, clutching a threadbare stuffed bunny in her arms. Her eyes are wide, curious. Afraid, Miriam kneels gently, staying a few steps away. "I'm just folding," she says softly, like someone explaining a game. "You see? Left, right, press. Left, right, press." The girl watches. Then, slowly, she lowers the bunny to mimic the motion. Left, right, press. And something happens. She smiles. It's small, barely there, but it's the kind of smile that costs energy, like the first stretch after a deep sleep. Later that morning, Mr. Harrow sits in his study, reviewing portfolios. His days are structured, divided into blocks of time, investments, construction deals, legal calls. There's no space for interruption, but the monitor on his wall flickers. Camera 14, laundry room. He sees his daughter not just standing, but mimicking, smiling, and the maid kneeling, patient as stone, speaking without agenda. He leans back in his chair. Doesn't rewind this time. He just watches. The next day, Miriam is given a new assignment. Light childcare assistance, the head of staff tells her. Not because Mr. Harrow said so, but because the speech therapist didn't show up. Again. He won't be happy, the head of staff warns. The twins don't do well with substitutes. Miriam only nods. She doesn't consider herself a substitute. She doesn't consider herself anything yet. That afternoon, she joins the children on the east porch, a wide space with sunlight slanting through the lemon trees. The boy sits stiffly on the bench. The girl draws circles with her finger in the condensation of her glass. Neither speaks. Miriam doesn't ask questions. She simply sits. She lets the silence be what it is, not a problem to fix, but a guest to share the bench with. Then she begins to hum. It's faint, almost broken, just breath against breath. The girl looks up. The boy glances sideways, and slowly, softly, Miriam starts tapping a rhythm on the wood. Not a song, just a heartbeat. Thumb, palm, a pattern as old as time. And without meaning to, the boy begins to mimic it. Later, in the staff break room, the butler finds her warming soup. "You're not trained for this," he says gently, not unkindly. "I know." "Then how are you doing it?" She pauses. "I'm not," she says. "They are." That night, the father comes to dinner late. The children are already seated. For the first time in months, their forks aren't still. They are eating. Not much, but enough to notice. And in front of the girl, the bunny is seated too, its ears propped carefully beside her cup. Mr. Harrow's hand trembles when he picks up his glass. He doesn't show it, but inside, something cracks. Because it's not about the food, it's about presence. The children are here now, not just physically. They are here, and he doesn't know why. The next morning, the house wakes earlier. Sunlight comes through windows that haven't been opened in years. A breeze flutters the hallway drapes. Somewhere, a bird dares to sing near the eastern hedge. Miriam walks slowly through the kitchen, collecting empty plates, pausing at the back door to smell the rain-drenched soil. The children trail behind her, quiet but present. And when she hums soft, wordless, steady, they don't stop her. They follow. Later that day, the father finally speaks to her directly. In the sunroom. Alone. What exactly are you doing with them? She looks up from the toy she's been wiping clean. Listening, she says. To what? The silence. He frowns. That's not a method. It's what they've lived in, she replies. Maybe they just need someone to live in it with them. He exhales. The room goes quiet again. Then he says, My wife used to say things like that. Miriam says nothing. She lets the name float in the space between them. She wrote, he says suddenly, voice lower. She kept journals, notebooks, songs. I found one, Miriam admits softly. I didn't read it, just held it. He studies her, confused. Why? It felt warm. A beat passes. He nods once, almost imperceptibly, then turns and walks out. But later that night, a housekeeper brings Miriam a package, no name on it, just a box wrapped in old fabric. Inside, a notebook. The first of many. The handwriting is soft, feminine, ink faded at the edges. The first page says only this. If you're holding this, it means you stayed long enough to be trusted. Thank you. Miriam closes the book, tears pressing against her throat. She doesn't cry. Not yet. But when she walks back through the hallway, past the children's room, she hears something strange. A hum, from two voices, faint, in rhythm, and one of them is the boy, breathing in, breathing out, trying to match the sound of hope. The mansion wakes differently now. The morning light no longer slices through the windows like cold steel. It spills gently over the floors, warming the corners it once avoided. And in the east wing, where once no child dared linger beyond mealtime, the twins now wait, quietly, for Miriam to arrive. She doesn't knock anymore. She steps in softly, humming, always humming. Today it's something new, a lullaby in a language only the heart understands. No words, just warmth, stretched into melody. The boy sits at the table with a sketchpad he hasn't touched in weeks. The girl presses daisies between two pages of a book she doesn't read. Their world is slow, still, but it no longer feels stuck. Miriam kneels beside the boy and watches his pencil move. There are no lines, no shapes, just motion. But it is something. She doesn't praise, doesn't label. She only places her hand lightly on the corner of the page, holding it in place as if to say, it matters. Later, in the kitchen, the chef complains about the shift in routine. They want fruit for breakfast now. Fruit, not the oatmeal, not the protein blend, but pears, like it's a village market. Miriam smiles gently. Pears are soft, sweet, easy to bite. The chef grumbles, but he peels them anyway. And when the children finish their breakfast without resistance, the butler makes a note in his ledger. 3rd day in a row, full consumption. Upstairs, Mr. Harrow watches everything. Not through cameras this time, through doorways, from behind bookshelves, from the landing. He doesn't speak, but his presence is undeniable, like a mountain that refuses to cast a shadow but still blocks the sun. Miriam knows he's there. She doesn't change. She still sings when she washes the window panes. She still leaves small wildflowers by the back porch. She still listens to the silence between the children's steps and treats it like a story unfolding. One afternoon, the girl reaches for Miriam's hand, not for balance, not in fear, just to hold it. The contact is brief, but something inside Miriam's chest presses tight not from pain, but from reverence. She says nothing, but the warmth in her eyes says everything. Later that day, the twins are taken to the estate garden. It hasn't been used in years. The grass is uneven, and vines creep over the low benches. But the sun is kind, and the air smells like possibility. The girl runs first, clumsy, beautiful. The boy follows, slower, eyes scanning every leaf like a map. Miriam doesn't call out. She just walks behind them, letting them lead. And then it happens. The boy trips. Not hard, just enough to stumble forward, knees hitting dirt. The gardener flinches. The head of security reaches for his radio, but Miriam steps forward slowly. She kneels and waits. The boy looks up. His lip quivers, but she doesn't speak. She just opens her arms, not demanding, just offering. And the boy crawls forward, rests his head against her shoulder. Not crying, just breathing. Breathing. In, out, like she taught him. From the patio, Mr. Harrow watches. His jaw clenches. He turns before anyone sees his face. Inside the house, in a room no one has entered since his wife died, he stands by her old writing desk. The notebooks are still there, stacked, dusty, unopened. He picks up the top one. For a moment, his fingers hover. Then he sets it down again. Later that night, Miriam sits in the staff quarters, flipping through the gifted notebook. She still hasn't read the pages in full, only the edges, only the tone. She doesn't want to rush it. Some words are meant to be sipped, not swallowed. A soft knock interrupts her. It's the butler. Mr. Harrow requests your presence in the study. Her stomach tightens. She wipes her hands, straightens her dress. Inside the study, the fire is lit for the first time in years. He doesn't look up when she enters, just gestures toward the seat across from him. She sits, still, patient. I want to understand, he says without preamble, why the children respond to you. She takes a moment, then answers, I don't try to fix them. He looks up, and I let them be heard even when they don't speak. He studies her face. There's something unreadable in his eyes, something like a memory that doesn't want to surface. I spent millions on specialists, he says bitterly. Nothing changed. She nods. Because healing doesn't come from pressure, it comes from presence. A long silence. Then he says, almost whispering, my wife, she used to hum too. Miriam's gaze softens. She left her warmth in this house, she says. The children remember, but they needed someone to help them carry it. The fire crackles. He leans forward. What do you need, Miss Miriam? She hesitates, then speaks. So quietly he almost misses it. Just a little more time. He nods. A single, slow nod. That night, the hallway glows dimly as the children sleep. The boy holds his sketchpad to his chest. The girl sleeps with the bunny between her arms and a daisy beneath her pillow. And in the study, the father opens the first notebook. On the first page, in the same soft handwriting, a single sentence. Start where the silence is. He doesn't cry. Not yet. But his chest feels full of something for the first time in years. Something that might be grief, or grace, or both. The next morning arrives with soft thunder in the distance. The sky hangs heavy with clouds, and the air smells of wet earth and something older like memory. Miriam stands at the kitchen sink, rinsing a chipped mug. Outside, raindrops begin to tap against the windows, slow at first, then faster, until the whole house seems wrapped in a hush of falling water. The children sit quietly in the sunroom, their eyes tracing the rivulets on the glass. The girl hums under her breath. The boy taps his fingers in rhythm against his chair. Not words, not speech, but sound. It's enough. Miriam joins them, towel in hand, and kneels beside the window. Without instruction, the girl leans into her side, head resting gently against Miriam's shoulder. There are no activities planned, no goals to meet. Just this, being here, together, letting the rain do the talking. Upstairs, Mr. Harrow stands behind a curtain, watching, not spying, witnessing, and for once, he doesn't feel the urge to step away. Later that afternoon, a call comes. A renowned child development therapist, one of the best in the country. Mr. Harrow had booked her months ago, and today is her scheduled visit. She arrives in a grey car, with a clipboard and a practiced smile. The children don't respond well. The girl hides behind the sofa. The boy stiffens, his hands balling into fists. The therapist frowns. They're exhibiting regression, she says. Who's been their primary interaction point recently? Mr. Harrow looks at Miriam. The therapist turns. You. Her tone isn't cruel, but it cuts anyway. You're not licensed. No, Miriam replies softly. No background in behavioral therapy? Education? No, she says again, calm. The therapist clicks her pen. I'll need them removed from your care until we can assess the potential damage. Miriam doesn't flinch. And what will you assess? Developmental benchmarks, language delay, regression in emotional expression, resistance to structured engagement. They've smiled, Miriam says gently. Smiling isn't measurable progress. Miriam nods slowly. Neither is love, she says. But it changes everything. There's a pause, a quiet so deep even the rain stops for a breath. The therapist scoffs lightly. We'll begin sessions tomorrow. But when she reaches for the girl's hand, the child pulls away. Not harshly, just firmly. She walks back to Miriam and places her tiny fingers around Miriam's wrist and holds it. That night, Mr. Harrow sits at his wife's desk again. He reads 3 pages, then closes the notebook and stares into the dark. The next morning, he cancels the therapist's visit, says nothing more, just writes a single note and slides it under Miriam's door. It reads, "I trust your presence." That day, the girl begins to hum aloud. She walks into the garden with Miriam and picks leaves, one by one, sorting them by color. The boy brings his sketchpad again, but this time he draws faces. 2 small ovals, 1 large one, and in the middle, a sun. Miriam doesn't ask what it means. She doesn't need to. That evening, the household feels strange, alive, almost. The chef experiments with flavor, the gardener prunes roses that haven't bloomed in years, and the housekeeper leaves a vase of fresh daisies near the grand piano. No one plays it, but still, the air feels like music. After dinner, the twins insist on helping with the dishes. It's a mess, water everywhere, soap bubbles on the floor, a cracked plate, but they laugh. They laugh. The sound is awkward, unfamiliar, but true. Miriam leans against the counter, watching. The butler enters, freezes at the doorway. "Is that?" he whispers. Miriam just nods, tears quietly slipping down her cheek. Upstairs, the father hears it too. He closes his eyes, and for the first time in over a year, he lets himself remember her, his wife standing barefoot in this kitchen, laughing just like that, flour on her hands, singing lullabies to a baby that wouldn't sleep. That night, the fire in the study burns longer. The notebook lies open on the desk. 1 sentence, underlined twice. "Don't try to fix the silence. Learn to walk in it." Mr. Harrow doesn't sleep. He walks the halls instead, barefoot, like her. He pauses outside the children's door. It's cracked open. Inside, the twins are curled up on the rug, Miriam between them, her back against the wall, head tipped to the side in sleep. A soft hum still lingers in the air, not hers. The children's, echoing what she's given them. The father doesn't step inside. He just watches, and something in his chest, something old, locked away, begins to shift. Not break, not heal, just move. And that's how it begins. Morning arrives without warning. The sky is clear again, as if the rain had never been. But the earth is soft, soaked through with memory. The house breathes differently now, not louder, just deeper, like lungs once collapsed, slowly learning to expand. In the dining room, sunlight touches the rim of every plate. The twins sit side by side. Their hands still hesitate, but they hold their forks. They wait not for food, but for her. Miriam enters without a tray, without fanfare, just a soft smile and a folded napkin tucked under her arm. "Today," she says gently, "we're having breakfast outside." The children glance at each other, unsure. "Under the fig tree," she adds, "where the breeze tells stories." They follow. No tantrums, no coaxing, only curiosity. The butler helps carry the plates, the chef mutters but packs fresh fruit, and the gardener clears a path through the dewy grass. By the time Mr. Harrow hears the laughter through the window, the twins are barefoot in the grass, biting into pear slices and giggling at a bee that refuses to leave them alone. He watches from the second-floor balcony, coffee in hand, stunned into stillness. He hasn't heard laughter in that garden since her. He closes his eyes and breathes. Later that afternoon, Miriam sits on the porch with her notebook. Not the wife's, her own, a plain one with worn edges. She writes slowly, carefully. Each word feels heavier now, not because it's sad, because it matters. The boy peeks over her shoulder. He says nothing, but his hand touches hers, a silent question. She turns the page and offers him the pen. He draws a line, then another, then a circle. Then he presses the pen into her hand and nods. She adds a swirl. And just like that, The page is no longer blank, it's shared. Evening falls with a soft chill. The house gathers itself in quiet. The twins are bathed and ready for bed. But instead of lying down, the girl sits near the window, staring up at the stars. The boy paces. Miriam kneels beside them. "Would you like a story?" Two heads nod, but when she reaches for a book, the boy shakes his head. He points at her, then touches his chest. She understands. He doesn't want a written story. He wants her story. So she tells them, softly, slowly, about a little girl who lived in a one-room house with her mother and 4 brothers. About nights without power, and the way the moon became their lamp. About prayers whispered over empty pots. About laughter shared over nothing but roasted yam. About how that girl learned that silence wasn't the absence of love sometimes, it was the shape love took when the world got too loud. She doesn't embellish. She doesn't hide the truth. She tells it like rain, steady, honest, healing. The children don't ask questions, but when she finishes, the girl lays her head on Miriam's lap. The boy holds her hand, and from the hallway hidden in shadow, Mr. Harrow hears every word. That night, he doesn't return to the study. He walks into his wife's music room instead. Everything is untouched. The piano, the lace cloth on the chair, the worn slippers by the door. He sits, not at the piano, just in the corner. He opens the second notebook. Halfway through, he finds a letter, unfinished. "If I leave before they're ready, tell them lullabies aren't about sleep. They're about presence, about staying long enough that silence turns into trust." His hands tremble. He sets the notebook down. The next morning, he waits in the dining room before anyone else. He's dressed simply. No tie, no watch. When Miriam arrives with the children, she stops in surprise. He's seated at the middle of the table. "Sit," he says gently. They do. Breakfast is different that day, slower, full of pauses, and somehow that makes it feel full. The boy hands his father the salt. The girl giggles when juice spills. No one flinches. Mr. Harrow watches them closely. Not like a stranger trying to understand, but like a father, remembering. After the meal, he walks Miriam to the door. She thinks he's about to say thank you, but he doesn't. He just asks quietly, "Would you stay?" "I already have," she replies without smiling. And somehow, that means more. That night, she sings, not a lullaby, just a hum, sitting in the hallway between the children's rooms, watching their shadows move behind the night lights. And in the master bedroom, a man who hasn't slept well in years finally closes his eyes. Not because he's at peace, but because he believes, for the first time, that peace is possible. The house has changed. Not dramatically, not in decoration or design, but in breath. Where once it held its lungs tight, frozen in grief, in shame, in the pressure to remain untouched, it now exhales, slowly, softly. The kind of breath you don't notice until it's gone. The children wake on their own now. No more alarms, no more routines forced by charts and clocks. They wake when the morning light warms their pillows, when the birds outside trill small songs, when Miriam's footsteps drift gently through the hall. She doesn't knock anymore. They expect her, but not as staff, as presence. The boy has started drawing full faces, real ones. He draws Miriam first, her eyes too large, her nose too small, but unmistakably her. Then he draws his sister, then their mother, and finally he draws a man with tired eyes, a bent back, and a small son rising behind his shoulder. It is his father. Miriam finds the drawing tucked beneath her folded apron in the laundry room. She doesn't say anything, but she holds it close to her chest, and for a long time she stands by the window and watches the trees move like slow dancers. Downstairs, Mr. Harrow attends a virtual board meeting. Investments, asset shifts, the usual flood of numbers. But for the first time, his eyes keep drifting to the frame on his desk, a new edition. It holds the drawing, crinkled, smudged, precious. A part of him still aches when he looks at it, not from sadness, from being seen. That evening, something unexpected happens. The boy speaks. It's not a full sentence, just a word. "Mama," he says it softly, not to Miriam, not to his sister, but to the photograph on the living room shelf, the one of their mother in the garden, arms open, mid-laugh, eyes squinting into the sun. He touches the frame, says it again, "Mama," His voice cracks, but it holds. Miriam is in the doorway, frozen. The girl clutches her hand. Then she too whispers, "Mama." The house doesn't react. No flickering lights. No dramatic music. Just silence. Stillness. And then, as if cued by grace, the wind picks up outside. The trees rustle. A low sound, almost a hum, moves through the hallways. Upstairs, Mr. Harrow hears it. But he doesn't go to them. He walks instead to his wife's old closet, opens the door, touches the scarf she always wore in winter, and lets himself cry. Not from pain, from the flood of love that has nowhere left to go but out. Later, he finds Miriam in the sunroom. She's sewing a torn pillowcase. The children are already asleep. He stands quietly, then clears his throat. "They spoke," he says. She nods. "I know." He takes a breath, then says, "I want to tell them a story." Miriam looks up, surprised. "You?" "Yes." "Which one?" He looks lost for a second, then says, "One she used to tell, about the boy who followed the wind into the forest." Miriam smiles softly. "I'll sit with you." "No," he says. "Just show me how." So she does. She takes his hand and places the pillowcase in it. "This is how you hold presents," she says. "Not by knowing what to say, but by staying anyway." He nods. The next night, he gathers the twins in the music room. They sit on cushions, knees tucked, eyes wide. He begins awkwardly, stumbling, his voice thin, but when he mentions the wind, their faces light up. And by the time he finishes, voice steadier now, rhythm gentler, the girl is asleep on his lap, and the boy has curled up by his side. He doesn't move. He just holds them. And in that moment, the house no longer feels large. It feels whole. Miriam stands at the doorway, watching. She presses her hands together, heart full. But she doesn't step forward. She knows what this is. It's not the end of grief. It's the beginning of belonging. Later that night, she sits in her room and writes in her own notebook. Today they remembered love is not something that leaves. It waits. It waits in lullabies, in hands held, in stories told by broken voices. It waits in rain, in breath, in silence. It waited for them, and they came. She closes the book and places it beside her bed. Tomorrow will bring more questions, more stillness, more rising suns behind weary shoulders. But tonight, they rest, together. The air smells different today, sweeter, warmer, not from perfume or polish, but from bread baking in the kitchen and the faint scent of lavender from the open windows upstairs. Miriam walks barefoot through the east corridor, her steps soft against the wood. The morning sun pours across the floor like a blessing, and somewhere behind her, the sound of small feet follows, not hurried, not afraid, just present. The children walk beside her now. They don't cling, they don't shrink, they walk with her. And that, she knows, is everything. In the study, Mr. Harrow finishes a call with his lawyers. Something about a new trust, something about long-term planning. But his mind is not in the numbers today. It's in the hallway where his children laugh, where their voices no longer feel like strangers in their own home. He stands by the window and watches them chase shadows across the garden wall. Miriam is sitting beneath the fig tree, sketchpad open, the boy drawing beside her. The girl is tying blades of grass into little circles and calling them crowns. He almost waves, but he stops himself. Later, at lunch, he joins them at the table without announcing it. The boy looks up, surprised. The girl points at the chair next to Miriam. He sits. No hesitation. The meal is quiet, but not tense. There is chewing and sipping and the soft clatter of forks. The girl swings her legs. The boy hums something unfamiliar. Afterwards, the children run to the backyard with their sketchbooks. Miriam starts to rise, but Mr. Harrow gently reaches across the table and says, "Can I ask something?" She pauses, nods. He searches for the right words, then says, "How did you know what they needed, when even I couldn't see it?" Her voice is calm. "I didn't." "Then what did you do?" "I stayed." He looks at her, eyes flickering with something like shame. "I left," he says. "Not physically, but I did." "You were grieving," she replies. "They needed me. They still do." His throat tightens. "I don't know how to be what they need." "You don't have to know," Miriam says softly. You only have to be willing. He looks away. But he doesn't argue. That night, the children ask if he can read again. He does. His voice shakes at first. The words don't flow like hers, but he keeps going. And when he finishes, the girl leans into him and whispers, "Again." He laughs a short, surprised sound. The boy grins. He reads it again. After the children fall asleep, he finds Miriam in the kitchen, wiping the counter. He stands in the doorway for a long time before saying, "You've given them something I never could." She shakes her head. "I didn't give it. I just reminded them it was still there." He nods, slowly. "I want you to stay," he says. "I have." "No," he says, voice catching. "I mean permanently. Not as help, not as staff, as family." She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she asks, "Are you sure?" He walks to the window and looks into the dark yard, where 2 tiny sketchbooks sit forgotten on a bench. "I've never been more sure of anything." She steps beside him. "I'm not perfect. Neither are they. Neither am I." They stand in silence. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, just still. Then she says, "If I stay, it's not to fix you. Or them." He turns to her. "I don't want to be fixed. I want to feel again." And that, finally, is the truth. The next morning, the twins are waiting in the garden. The boy holds his sketchpad. The girl holds 2 cups of warm tea. Miriam arrives. And beside her, for the first time in years, is their father. He kneels in the grass. The girl places a cup in his hand. The boy places the sketchpad in his lap, and they sit all 4 of them beneath the fig tree. The world is not perfect. The grief is not gone. But it is shared now, and in that sharing, they begin again. Not as strangers, but as a family. Rain comes again. Not hard, not storming, just gentle, the kind that kisses window panes and turns silence into something sacred. Miriam lights a candle in the kitchen, not because there's no power, but because the glow feels warmer than the bulbs overhead. The children sit at the table, their notebooks open, drawing not with precision but with peace. Scribbles, suns, uneven hearts. Mr. Harrow stands by the doorway, watching. His tie is gone, his sleeves are rolled. There's flour on his forearm from the bread he tried to knead earlier, a disaster Miriam pretended not to notice. "I want to show you something," he says. The twins look up. Miriam tilts her head. He walks to the bookshelf, pulls down a thick black binder. "This," he says softly, opening it, "was your mother's. It's filled with songs, poems, pieces of lullabies, lyrics half finished, sketches of butterflies and bedtime stories she never had the chance to tell. She wrote everything down," he whispers, "even the things she was too afraid to say out loud." He turns to the last page. Blank. Then he hands the pen to his daughter. "Would you like to finish it?" The girl nods solemnly, and without hesitation, she draws a simple line. A house, a tree, 2 small children, 1 woman with long hair, and a man standing just beside her, arms open. She draws a heart over all of them. No one says a word. Later that night, the thunder rolls in. Miriam is in the hallway when she hears the door open. Small feet patter across the floor. The twins find her. They don't say it with their mouths. Not yet. They say it by crawling into her lap. They say it by resting their heads against her chest. They say it by breathing slow, even, safe. Mr. Harrow watches from the stairs. He steps down, sits beside them on the floor. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't speak. He just places his hand gently on his daughter's back, his arm around his son, and then the girl whispers it, soft. So soft it almost gets lost in the storm. "Mama," not as a memory, not as a ghost, as a truth, a choice. Miriam doesn't cry, but her heart cracks open wider than it ever has. Not because she needed the title, but because they gave it freely. Hours later, the rain still falling outside, Mr. Harrow walks Miriam to the door of her room. He lingers. "There's more in me," he says, voice low, "than silence. I know. There's still grief. I know. There's still love." This time, she says nothing, because he's finally learned how to say it. The next day, the house opens all its windows. The gardener plants new flowers. The piano is cleaned. The east porch is painted. And in the front hall, just beneath the grand staircase, a new frame is hung. Inside it, a photograph. The twins, Miriam, Mr. Harrow, all seated beneath the fig tree, sunlight in their hair, sketchbooks in hand, laughter in their eyes. And written beneath it, in the late Mrs. Harrow's handwriting, family is not who fills the silence. Family is who stays long enough to hear what it's been trying to say. The house is no longer a museum of grief. It is a living thing now. It breathes. It sings. It holds. And in every quiet hallway, in every soft breath between footsteps, there is a whisper, gentle, eternal, that something holy happened here. Not loud, not grand, but true. And that was enough to change everything. Forever.